Hello everyone, Natlan's renowned Saurian veteran, Aoife, will be the one new 4-star animo character releasing in Genshin patch 5.6. As Natlan's third male character, Aoife has a kit with a role that is already fulfilled by existing animo units. Because of this, there is understandably not too much excitement or positivity about the meta strength of his kit, but despite this, Aoife can still be an effective character within his particular niche. To know how good Aoife can actually be, I will be explaining how Aoife works, the best ways to build him, his potential best teams, and analyzing his place in the meta in terms of overall strength and pull value. Pretty much everything you need to know with simple and practical explanations while also giving more detailed analysis that is backed by calcs and TC. Aoife is a 4-star animo catalyst user that ascends with elemental mastery. His main role is to be an on-field animo character driving transformative reactions, specifically swirl and electrocharged, while also healing the team. Thus, Aoife fulfills the same role as other on-field animo drivers like Sucrose and Mizuki. The biggest difference is in their playstyle, as Aoife plays very similarly to Wanderer, being able to hover in the air to use enhanced normal attacks. Aoife's skill is the majority of his kit. When used, Aoife enters Night Soul's Blessing with 80 Night Soul points, gains resistance to interruption, and starts hovering in the air while enhancing his attacks. While in this enhanced state, you can either tap or hold the attack button to make Aoife fire tonic shots from his gun. Based on pre-release footage and info, spamming the attack button fires up to 11 hits, while holding the attack button fires up to 12 hits, so you will typically be holding down the attack button. The first shot that hits an enemy generates 4 or 5 animal particles, and every other hit can trigger swirl. Each shot does damage and heals the entire team, with the healing scaling off of Aoife's elemental mastery. At talent level 9, a 1000 EM Aoife will heal the team about 441 HP per hit. Holding normal attack fires up to 12 hits, so in total, Aoife can heal a total of about 5300 HP for the entire team every rotation, which honestly isn't too much healing from the Saurian doctor. Aoife's burst is fairly simple. He fires a circular AoE that deals damage and groups enemies for a few seconds. If those enemies were affected by Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo, up to a max of 4 enemies will be marked and will take additional damage after a few seconds, corresponding to the element they were affected by originally. Other than his elemental skill, Aoife's A1 passive is also a very important part of his kit. While Aoife is in Night Soul's Blessing, he will buff the reaction damage of both Swirl and Electrocharge for all party members depending on the total amount of Night Soul points the entire team currently has. Each Night Soul point gives Aoife 1 Rescue Essential point, and every 1 Rescue Essential point increases the reaction damage of both Swirl and Electrocharge by 1.5%. At C0, you can have a max of 150 Rescue Essential points, meaning that the damage of Swirl and Electrocharge will increase by a maximum of 225%. For reference, a 1000 EM Mizuki with talent level 10 skill buffs only Swirl damage by 450%. While Mizuki's Swirl buff is higher, Aoife also buffs Electrocharge, and more units will trigger Electrocharge as only animo units can trigger Swirl. Because Aoife only gets a maximum of 80 Night Soul points from his skill by himself, he will need another Natlan teammate to actually be able to reach the max buff. But since Aoife constantly consumes Night Soul points after using his skill, you won't be able to maintain the max damage bonus to Swirl and Electrocharge all the time, as the buff will continually decrease the longer Aoife stays on field. Lastly, his A4 passive simply gives Aoife 80 EM for 10 seconds when Night Soul Burst is triggered, and he has the typical Natlan Night Soul Transmission and Exploration passives. That's everything about Aoife's base kit. For a full EM Aoife where he serves as an on-field animo driver, you want to prioritize leveling him to 90 first to increase the damage of transformative reactions. Then you can level his skill for additional healing. After that, you can level his burst, but it isn't that important. Aoife is a very simple character to play in practice. After setting up your support skills, you can burst on Aoife, press a skill, then hold down the attack button to fire his enhanced shots until he runs out of Night Soul points and his enhanced state is over. Next, let's cover Aoife's Constellations, as he is a 4-star. None of his Constellations change his core gameplay, but some of them do give him a significant boost in power. C1 helps Aoife's ER requirements by giving him 6 extra energy when he attacks during his enhanced state from his skill, being able to be triggered once every 8 seconds. C2 increases the max Rescue Essential points he can have from 150 to 200, meaning that the maximum damage bonus to Swirl and Electrocharge that Aoife can provide to a team increases from 225% to 300%. In addition, every Night Soul point that the party has over 60 will give 5 times the amount of Rescue Essential points. So for instance, if the party has a total of 61 Night Soul points, instead of Aoife getting 61 Rescue Essential points, Aoife will get 65, since the 1 Night Soul point over 60 gives 5 Rescue Essential points instead of being a 1-to-1 conversion. Simply put, assuming Aoife is paired with another Natlan character like Auroron, C2 allows Aoife to better maintain the near max Swirl and Electrocharge damage bonus for the team. C3 increases his skill talent level by 3, C4 gives his burst 3 additional seconds of grouping while also giving Aoife 100 EM for 15 seconds after using his burst, C5 increases his burst talent level by 3, and lastly with C6, when Aoife holds the attack button down to fire shots while in his enhanced state with his skill, each hit has a 50% chance to fire an additional shot that deals 120% of Aoife's attack. Holding down the normal attack allows Aoife to shoot 12 shots, so on average, C6 gives an additional 6 hits. The extra damage from the additional hits themselves aren't too powerful, but the extra hits mean that Aoife can trigger more swirls and can provide extra team healing, which is pretty good. In addition, C6 extends the duration of flight for overworld exploration. Overall, while a C0 Aoife still functions, in terms of team damage, Aoife will get significant performance boost by getting his constellations like his C2 so he can properly maintain the larger buffs to swirl and electrocharge, and C6 for the additional hits, which translates to extra healing and reactions. Next, let's talk about Aoife's best build options. Just like other EM scaling animo drivers like Sucrose and Mizuki, Aoife will simply want EM based weapons. 5-star EM weapons such as Mizuki's signature or Nahida's signature are going to be good options if you have them. For 4-star weapon choices, well, weapons like Wandering Evenstar, which has an attack buff, and Sacrificial Fragments, which has an EM substack, can be used. The overall best and most accessible 4-star weapon is the Inazuma craftable catalyst Hakushin Ring. Since Aoife will generally be in a team with an electro character, he will trigger electro related reactions to activate the damage buff from this weapon's passive. In terms of artifacts, since Aoife's main role is an on-field animo driver that triggers a lot of swirls, 4-piece Viridescent Venerer is his clear best set. Since Aoife is a supportive character from Natlan, he can technically hold 4-piece scroll to uniquely give the full damage bonus buff to animo DPSs, but while this theoretically works, in practice Aoife is not a very effective scroll support for animo DPSs. This is because it takes Aoife a significant amount of time to go into Night Soul's Blessing with a skill, proc 4-piece scroll, then plunge out of his hovering state to swap back to other characters. So Aoife will generally stay as an on-field animo driver and just use 4-piece Viridescent Venerer. So for artifact stats, Aoife will simply be built full EM for his primary role as an animo driver, just like Mizuki and Sucrose. For substats, look for Elemental Mastery and Energy Recharge. Then, if you really want to optimize Aoife's build, you can try to get Attack and Crit substats. But you definitely don't need to go this far if you don't want to, so you can just focus on EM and ER. Now let's go over Aoife's main teams. You can technically play Aoife outside of his intended role as an on-field animo driver. For instance, you could have Aoife hold 4-piece scroll to buff another animo main DPS, or you could build Aoife as a traditional attack scaling carry to play him in a hyper carry team. However, these teams aren't very good. First, Aoife as a 4-piece scroll support isn't very effective because the max damage bonus requires Aoife to be in Night Soul's Blessing. To do this, Aoife has to use his skill to start hovering, trigger swirl, then has to hold his skill so he plunges out of the air before he can swap out. Since this takes up a significant amount of field time, 4-piece scroll Aoife isn't looking to be better than existing support options. Second, hyper carry Aoife just doesn't do a lot of damage since he doesn't have good attack scalings. So from a meta perspective, I wouldn't recommend playing these Aoife teams. Aoife's best teams will be where he is built full EM and plays as an animo on-fielder that drives transformative reactions, specifically swirl and electrocharge because he buffs their damage. Aoife requires another Natlan teammate who can generate Night Soul points off field to increase his reaction buff. Since Ororon fits this description perfectly and synergizes with Electrocharge, Ororon will always be paired with Aoife in his best teams. For the third slot, you'll need an off-field Hydro character for Electrocharge, so Farina, Yelan, or Xingqiu are good choices. For the final slot, the best option is looking to be Fischl as a second off-field Electro character providing more damage and Electro Resonance, but you can also run a second Hydro unit to rely on a double Hydro core or an animo support who has off-field capabilities like Venti or Kazuha in specifically scenarios where there are a lot of enemies. Theory Crafter Prastal calced the single target DPS of an Aoife team with Ororon, Farina, and Fischl, and the DPS looks fine for a Taser team. The team utilizes a split rotation with Farina, meaning you use Farina's skill every other rotation to avoid its 20-second cooldown and make the overall team rotation time shorter. According to Prastal, Aoife's reaction buffs allow each of the team's Electrocharged and Swirl reactions to deal around 5,000 more damage than Sucrose, which is quite significant, especially in AoE. He also mentioned that since Farina isn't as effective of a support in Taser due to her high ER requirements, lower personal damage, and damage buff not being as useful, Xingqiu will likely be better in this team, although planning a proper short rotation with Xingqiu is more complicated. To conclude this Aoife guide, I wanted to share my analysis on his place in the meta in terms of overall strength and pull value. While there has been only a few calcs out there from the TC that I followed, the overall conclusion is that C6 Aoife is a slight upgrade to Sucrose as an on-field animo driver in Taser teams damage-wise. So within this role of an on-field animo driver triggering transformative reactions, Aoife is technically a good unit in this niche as he is looking to perform as well, if not better than other animo units fulfilling the same role in terms of overall team DPS. However, both the role that Aoife fills and his actual kit design have significant flaws that prevent Aoife from being a very impactful character in the meta. For like other characters whose main teams are focused around Swirl and Electrocharge, Aoife's Taser teams will perform much better in AoE scenarios, but will perform much worse compared to other teams in single target, which is common in endgame content like Floor 12 of Spiral Abyss. Second, even though Aoife is supposed to be a healer, his team healing isn't isn't that strong, resulting in less overall team survivability compared to other healers, and his synergy with Farina being much weaker than it could be. And third, Aoife's performance as an EM Animo driver is dependent on constellations like his C2 and C6. Without them, his teams won't deal as much damage. If we evaluate Aoife strictly based on his performance in his teams, then based on pre-release calcs, he's a solid on-field Animo driver for TCer teams, being able to match and even surpass Sucrose in terms of team damage with his C6, and Sucrose is one of the best on-field Animo driver options. Realistically, however, not many people are going to have C6 Aoife, which hurts his overall performance, and even if you do have him at C6, Aoife isn't a massive upgrade over Sucrose. Sucrose still performs the job of an on-field Animo driver effectively with lower constellation investment, while also being a strong off-field support, which decreases the overall value of building Aoife. But Aoife's biggest overarching issue as a character is that he doesn't bring anything special as a new Animo unit. Sure, Aoife can be a good on-field Animo driver for TCer and can heal, but does Genshin really need yet another on-field Animo driver? We have Sucrose, Sayu, and Mizuki, who was released just 2 patches before Aoife's patch release, and even Heizo and Lan Yan can both technically be played in this role as well. And many of these units are also catalyst users, have EM scaling, and can heal. Within this niche, the only thing Aoife really brings that's unique is his Wanderer-like playstyle, where he hovers in the air and performs enhanced attacks. But he doesn't introduce anything new to the overall meta other than being a slight upgrade to on-field Sucrose at C6. So while Aoife is looking to perform well in his niche as an Animo on-fielder driving swirls in Electrochars, and his exploration looks to be solid, because there are already so many existing on-field Animo drivers such as Sucrose that can perform similarly, and the fact that TCer teams with Animo on-fielders aren't that good of a team archetype in general, Aoife isn't looking to be a very strong 4-star character meta-wise, and you should really only build him if you yourself really like him as a character. And that's everything I wanted to cover about Aoife. Huge shout out and thanks to Prastal for the Aoife calc shown in this video. He does some great TC work. I hope this guide and analysis was helpful to you all in giving you a better understanding of everything related to Aoife. Just clicking and watching the video helps the channel out immensely, and if you want to show even more support, consider liking or sharing the video, or click the subscribe button for more Genshin guide and analysis videos in the future. Leave any questions in the comments, and for all of you planning on wishing, I hope you all the best of luck on your Aoife pools.